Words like arrows in the night. I'm the latter-day lion. With power I'm trying to fight the lies with fire inside. Latter-day lion, I keep on climbing. The truth is my pride. My roar is my guide. To the sky, every word a battle cry. Strength and faith I can't deny. This lion lives and lions don't die. I'm the latter-day lion. With power I'm trying to fight the lies with fire inside. Latter-day lion, I keep on climbing. The truth is my pride. My roar is my guide. The fire of the restoration burns with holy strength from the Savior's arm. Standing tall in the light, called now for the fight. The lions of Judah and Ephraim unite. I'm the latter-day lion. With power I'm trying to fight the lies with fire inside. Latter-day lion, I keep on climbing. The truth is my pride. My roar is my guide. I roar like thunder, my heart's aflame. Truth my armor, you'll know my name. Through the shadows I stake my claim. This lion's pride will never be tame. I stand my ground, I hold the light. Words like arrows in the night. I'm the latter-day lion. With power I'm trying to fight the lies with fire inside. Latter-day lion, I keep on climbing. The truth is my pride. My roar is my guide. They throw their
Welcome everybody to a fun night. Actually, this originally was supposed to happen on Saturday, but I had some family stuff that kind of came in here. I do want to thank my guest here, Rudy, for agreeing to do this. Yeah, there was actually some interesting comments going back and forth before I finally said, you know what, let's have this. Let's have a live discussion here.
Yeah,
So,
man.
oh man,
Actually, if we're gonna be honest, actually, that was so long ago. I don't even remember the comments that were thrown out.
yeah,
You have to.
I think honestly, like I don't really think it's necessarily too relevant, honestly. But a
No,
lot of
no,
the
we
I get
don't.
a lot of the same comments from other folks, and I don't think it was just on one video you were commenting on. But regardless, I mean, you tend to have some grievances for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which I, honestly, it's understandable. There's a lot of people. I was actually having a discussion on TikTok before jumping on here. Um, but yeah, I mean, we're ready to take this in any direction that you want to go, Rudy. The only thing that I
Yeah,
really ultimately ask is that we just, keep it to one subject at a time, and let's have some fun.
yeah, man. It sounds good. So I don't, just to point out, I don't have any grievances with LDS members specifically because every interaction that I've ever had has always been pleasant with missionaries or whoever, and I'm sure this will be no different. But just it's just the theology and perhaps maybe the founders. So
Okay.
that's where my grievances would be, but not LDS members in particular,
Okay.
which I think that they're pretty sincere in what they believe.
So when looking at like so when looking at, for instance, when Jesus says, by their fruits shall you know them,
Sure.
when it comes to the Latter-day Saint paradigm, eh, you said that you have a lot of respect for Latter-day Saints, and you tend to like them as a people, eh, but you don't think that the fruits that itself, or that the tree is necessarily good. Am I off base with that, or?
Well, I wouldn't say that the tree isn't necessarily good because I would say that you could be an orthodox believer and still like display bad fruit, which
Mhm.
prove that shows whether someone's a believer or not, like basically the fruit you believe. So I would actually agree that on average, most LDS members probably live better lives than most orthodox groups of Christians. And
Okay.
so when you go out there and you see missionaries um, uh, trying to preach the gospel or whatever, they don't really drink, smoke. I'm sure it happens on all campuses, including BYU. But like on average, I think that Christians can, because of cultural standards, I think here in the West and in America, culture really kind of hinders a lot of Christians' walk. So, but yeah, I don't have anything to say negative about LDS people in
Mhm.
per se.
Okay.
Just the theology.
Okay. So obviously there's a lot of things we can do to break down the theology. So what would you say is kind of the first point of contention for you?
Uh, so I would say I don't know if Latter-day Saints prefer to be called polytheists, but if we're being pretty straightforward, I'd say probably the issue of monotheism versus polytheism. Would you
Mhm.
agree that LDS theology preaches polytheism or more than one God?
I guess it would depend on what you mean by polytheism. Just
Well,
so
I'm
we have
not
a
talking
clear
about.
definition.
Well, do you prefer henotheism?
I think henotheism would be a more accurate term, because with polytheism, it requires the worship of multiple deities,
That's fine. We
whereas
can go with
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
We can go with
whereas
henotheism.
yeah. So like henotheism is the acknowledgement of other divine entities, other deities, but the worship of one. So I think that would probably be more accurate of what Latter-day Saints are.
Sure, sure. So I would say that the Bible, as the way Jews and Christians understand it, preaches monotheism. So that would be a major difference.
Okay. So this is the thing that I think would kind of throw a bit of a wrench in that, because there's even a lot of scholars out there that would recognize that, despite many of their own theologies. I mean, you may have heard, like, a lot of Latter-day Saints would point to, someone like Michael Heiser, for instance. You know,
Sure.
before he passed away, he he was a deeply evangelical man, but he was also an honest scholar. And
Yeah.
recognizing that, especially prior to Babylon, recognizing things called the divine council. I'm not sure how familiar you are with things like that. Like, are you familiar with that at all, or?
I am familiar with Michael Heiser.
Okay, so are you familiar with his work on the divine council then?
I have read The Unseen Realm and Reverse and Herman.
Okay. All right. So you kind of have a basic understanding then of his, scholarly consensus and it's not just him. I mean, Bruce Metzger, Bart Ehrman, like several other biblical scholars, both critical and
Sure.
non, would acknowledge, the ancient Hebrews, especially prior to the Babylonian exile, recognized the existence of other deities, but they worshipped one, which would have been Jehovah. He was specifically the God of Israel, and that there were other gods that were given to other nations.
So, what would your understanding of, if you were to basically convey Michael Heiser's position, how would you convey it?
If I were to convey it, it would be that there was a divine council, that there were multiple divine entities with the head god El Elyon, who is able to apportion each of the gods their own territory.
Okay. So, what's really interesting is that he's done a lot of literature on this, but
Mhm.
also he actually has a very good article that's on byu.edu. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called You've Seen One Elohim, You've Seen Them All, a critique of
Mhm.
Mormonism's use of Psalm 82. Have you read that?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and I don't think it was originally published by BYU, but
No, it wasn't. It was
I
like
think
the Maxwell
yeah,
Institute or something like that.
yeah, like well, and Michael Heiser was a deeply devout evangelical. We got to get that out of the way right off the
Well,
bat.
we have to get that out of the way,
Yeah.
but we also have to get into the text of why he says that there was
Mhm.
only one Elohim, as in basically ontologically.
So
There,
this was
yeah.
so again, like we can look at the collection of Michael Heiser's work, and he wouldn't say that there was one Elohim,
No, no,
because
no.
Elohim in Hebrew it signifies multiple different deities,
So
and this is something we
what
also see in
I
the
would,
biblical text too.
if I was to convey Michael Heiser's position, he would say there's multiple Elohim. So Yahweh, he would say that Yahweh is Elohim, but not all Elohim are Yahweh. He would say that Yahweh is species specific, while Elohim is just a broad category of spirit beings. Would you agree with that?
No.
Those are that's his exact wording. If you actually
So
read
what
his,
paper? So again, let's look at the paper then. So what paper is he? Did you quote that from?
you've seen one Elohim, you've seen them all. A critique of Mormonism use of Psalm 82 by the Maxwell Institute, and you can find it on BYU. I don't have it up in front of me. I don't have I'd have to borrow my wife's laptop, but he specifically talks about Yahweh being species specific.
Okay, so let's look this up here. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and pull this up here. Where? Okay, that's not what I wanted. Hold up. You know what? Let's go ahead and just open up the PDF here.
It's like 40 some pages. So
Yeah.
you're gonna have to, yeah.
So let's see if we can find, because you said this was an exact quote, right? All right.
Yep.
So let's see what he said here. So let's do the so what was the quote then? Let's do an exact search here.
I don't remember the exact quote, but he talks about Yahweh being species specific, species unique. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear it. So let's
Okay.
see here. So species unique isn't in there, but let's see here.
Let me, okay.
So let's see here. So so let's start here. So starting on page 5 where it talks about species, so Heiser has several positions. So in position A, He says position statements on Psalm 82 and the Divine Council, with which many
Mhm.
evangelicals would probably disagree, and with many Latter-day Saints would likely agree. So he's using specifically Psalm 82 here.
He is.
Starting, yeah. So the plural Elohim in Psalm 82, 1 and 6 are divine beings, not human judges or humans fulfilling any role.
Right. So that's the part where he's saying most evangelicals would disagree
Would
because they believe
disagree.
that it's taught. He believes that they would think that it's human judges, right? And so that's the part he's talking about, not
Mhm.
that Christians would disagree that there's different classes of spirit beings. So I think that's a
Right.
distinction.
So yeah, and based on what I've seen going in here, just going over, so yeah, just starting at the very beginning here, he's actually saying that we got this right, so to speak. That Latter-day Saints actually have this right and evangelicals actually have this wrong, despite his own theological things. But we'll continue going on here. The term monotheism is inadequate to describe what it is Israel believed about God and the members of his council. As the text explicitly says, there are other Elohim. References to us and our in passages like Genesis 1:26 do not refer to the Trinity. The plural Elohim of Psalm 82 are also not members of the Trinity. The denial statements of Isaiah and elsewhere do not constitute denials of the existence of other Elohim. Rather, they are statements of Yahweh's incomparability. The God of Israel did at times make himself known to people in the Old Testament in ways detectable to the human sense, including the corporeal. The Mormon understanding of God is not inherently polytheistic. It is polytheistic if Latter-day Saints insist that all Elohim are species equals, depending on and which depends on in part on how they parse the divine counsel. And so, yeah, that would be correct. Like, our understanding is not polytheistic, meaning we do not worship, all these other divine beings. They
Yeah.
are gods, which is what he will likely say during the rest of this paper, because this bleeds into other works that
No.
he's done before. Um,
Right.
but
Well,
the thing
yeah,
is
but
though, is that that's kind of the argumentation that he's bringing up here. So he's not saying that
so
there's species that
I
they're
know.
different species, but they're
No,
different
no.
in ranks, basically.
No, that's exactly what he's saying. So when he says the term Elohim, he specifically uses all the contexts in which it's used, right? Whether Samuel is raised, summoned from the dead by the witch of Endor, it's called an Elohim, or whether you have the angels are called Elohim, and all these spirit beings. So what he's doing is he's saying that Yahweh is Elohim, but not Elohim or Yahweh. So he does say that Yahweh stands alone ontologically, and he is one of a kind species. That is absolutely Michael Heiser's position. And if you talk about Psalm 82, we can get into Psalm 82 if you want. All you got to do is read the passage where he's talking about Elohim. He goes, God stands in the council of El. Elohim stands in the council of El. In the midst of Elohim, he makes judgment, right? So that's literally how it reads. And then he goes, we can pull it up. I don't have it right in front of me, but he talks about them judging unjustly. So this is the other spirit beings. But then he says, nevertheless, you're gonna die like men. So you thinking that you're gonna judge like me or you're like me, you're not. You're gonna die like every other created being. So he's telling them that they're going to basically be destroyed just like men.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're ontologically men, though. Like, because again, again, just kind of looking through here, like just looking at where Heiser uses species, right? Um, so for instance, on just on page 240 of the Farms Review from 2007, in my judgment, it's not difficult to demonstrate that the writers of the Hebrew Bible held a firm, uncompromising belief in Yahweh's species uniqueness. There's what you were looking at earlier, among the other gods assumed to exist. In briefest terms, the statements of the canonical text, poetic or otherwise, inform the reader that for the biblical writer, Yahweh was an Elohim, but no other Elohim was Yahweh, and never was, could be. This notion allows for the existence of other Elohim, and be more precise that the terms of polytheism and henotheism. It is also more accurate than monotheism, though it preserves the element that of that conception that is most important to traditional Judaism and Christianity. Yahweh's solitary otherness with respects to all is that both in heaven and earth. At this juncture, I would expect Mormon scholars to ask a fair question. On what grounds can this description of species uniqueness be established? That'll be the focus of topic 3, but first I will deal with one more presupposition. And that the word Elohim necessarily speaks of ontological traits of the God of Israel, thereby tagging the word with species exclusivity. We've unfortunately have become accustomed to talking and writing about the word Elohim with imprecision. Since the word is often used in the proper noun of the Hebrew Bible, we have used it as a modern term like monotheism to define what the Israelites believed. Letting the text say what it plainly says, that there are multiple Elohim, has become a painful and fearful experience for evangelicals. This phobia can be and should be cured by letting the text of the Hebrew Bible hold sway over our theology. So, in other words, this is the concept that we're looking at here. Yes, there were other Elohim, there were other divine beings, and I think that's something that we need to recognize here. I don't know what happened to Rudy here.
Can
Let's bring him
you
back.
hear me?
No, we can now. For whatever reason, you left the chat. So,
Oh man, my bad. Can you hear me
You did.
now?
I can hear you now. Sorry, I was probably
Okay.
going off. You were probably talking and trying to interject, and I'm sorry about that, man. Oh, there he goes again. Okay. I don't know if there's something going on with his connection or what, but this is getting interesting. So yeah, I hold up. Are we
Can you
back?
hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on, man. But going back to what you just read,
Mm-hmm. Come on, I'm not doing anything. There's nothing up my sleeves, folks. I don't know what's going on. I hope that it's just connectivity issues. So hopefully Rudy will be coming back here in a second here. Because this is ultimately fascinating. Because looking at the concept of the divine council, especially with what Heiser's saying, he's saying that we need to let the text speak for itself and not insert any kind of presuppositional concept here. So again, I'm hoping. Oh, here he comes. Here he comes.
yeah,
There we go.
bro.
You back?
Dude, I have no idea why I've disconnected. I'm on my Wi-Fi here, and I shouldn't have bad reception.
Yeah, I'm not
Can you hear me?
entirely sure what's going on. I can hear you. I can hear you. I'm actually hearing a bit of an echo coming in from your end.
I'm on my phone here, so you can hear me, right? I'm good.
Yeah, I can hear you. Hopefully
Okay.
everybody else can hear you as well. So
All right. So you literally read off where Heiser was talking about species uniqueness
Mhm.
in terms of Yahweh,
yes.
correct?
Yeah. So this is
Okay.
and this is where among the other gods assumed to exist. But if this goes into the fourth presupposition that he mentioned here, and that how even evangelicals have to wrestle with the fact that just because there is a species uniqueness, quote unquote, with it, or species
Yeah.
exclusivity, doesn't necessarily mean that there weren't other gods as well that were not also given their portion, like what we read in Deuteronomy 32 from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Well, we can go into Deuteronomy 32 if you don't mind.
Yeah. So our what version would you be reading from?
Dude, I'm trying not to use my phone. I do have an NIV hard copy. Usually I read out of the
Okay.
ESV.
Yeah. So so let's see here. So I like the new Revised Standard version. Just so we
That's
know,
fine.
Rudy, we're getting some echo coming from your phone there.
Bro, I'm just holding my phone right now
That'd
on
probably be why.
speakerphone.
No, you're good.
I'm sorry, but I don't have probably
You're
like the
fine.
best setup.
This is I mean, my setup's not necessarily the best, but I still do have one. Let's see here.
Yeah. So, like I said, this isn't some I do.
Oh, he's gone again. No, Rudy, come back. Uh Hold on, Rudy. I'm getting you on here.
No idea what's going on
I
right now.
don't either, man. I really don't. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up the NRSV here. Where's
Okay.
Yahweh? What's the name of the tab? All right, Deuteronomy 32. Here we go. Where are you? Here we go. Yeah,
Can you
I
hear
can
me?
hear you. I'm just pulling up the screen here really quick,
All right.
so that way we can actually see what's going on. Okay, so can you see the screen at all?
A little bit. Just go ahead. You can go ahead
Okay.
and read it.
So yeah, what I'm looking at here is starting in verse 8 and 9 of Deuteronomy 32, when the Most High apportioned the nations, when he divided humankind, he fixed the boundaries of the people according to the number of the gods. The Lord's own portion was his people, Jacob his allotted share. So we have Yahweh
Yeah.
where it has that capital Lord here, so that would be
Yep.
Yahweh, and then the Most High would be El Elyon. So that I think is the is
Okay.
the concept here. So Yahweh was given Israel, basically, and we also have other
Okay.
instances within the biblical text where other gods were given to other nations. So, like in Second Kings, where it talks about the god of
So
Chemosh given to Moab.
yeah, I don't. Yeah.
No. Oh no. I see. I'm usually the one who has the the issues here.
No idea, man.
Oh, criminy.
Dude, I have no idea what's going on, man.
I don't either.
So I'm connected to my Wi-Fi, man. I shouldn't have bad service. I don't know why I'm getting booted.
I can tell you here, my hands have been up this entire time. In fact, I'm looking at my
No,
second monitor here, and so I'm like, well, I'm not even doing anything.
no,
So
man.
yeah, no, it's
So
all good.
all right. So Deuteronomy 32, you got verse 9. Who are you saying El Elyon is? Elyon
So
is.
so he would be referred to as the Most High in verse 8.
So you're saying that Elyon is not Yahweh. Is that your position?
Correct. Yeah, that's according to what the Dead Sea Scrolls state.
The Dead Sea Scrolls don't say that.
They do, actually.
We're at
So I mean, we have this right here. So we go into the concept of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Like, how familiar are you with what the Dead Sea Scrolls state?
it depends what you're talking about because it's a collection of a whole broad swath of different texts, not just biblical texts,
Right.
apocryphal. Yeah, so yeah,
But yeah, with the Dead Sea Scrolls, these are basically the oldest surviving texts of what we would currently have as the Old Testament. So, like for instance, with what this has it here, this would actually contradict what it says in the Masoretic text and what we currently have in
are you
the
talking
majority
about the
of other
sons of
books.
God versus the sons of Israel? Is that
Yeah,
what you're talking about?
yeah. So the sons of Israel would have been part of the Masoretic text
Right,
versus, with the Qumran text, the Dead Sea Scrolls, since they are the oldest surviving text, we can actually make the assumption that they are probably the ones that are more accurate.
right,
And so when it says in the Dead Sea Scrolls, like it does in the NRSV, that they are apportioned according to the number of the gods, versus what
right.
it says in the Masoretic text, apportioned to the sons of Israel, this is where things start to go about. And this is
So
where I think a lot of Heiser's thesis comes from when it comes to the
so
uniqueness of Yahweh in relation to Israel.
okay, so I don't actually disagree with you. Like, I'm not debating what sons of God in the original because I agree that it likely did, as the ESV reads. What
Mhm.
I'm saying is, why is Elyon? Do you think that's separate from Yahweh?
Well, I mean, again, we have multiple instances where Yahweh is not the same entity as Elyon.
Yeah, but we have multiple instances where Yahweh is Elyon in the Bible.
So I guess this really would come down to, because from the Trinitarian perspective, you would say that they are one, right?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I would say,
So
well,
how
I would say Elyon is Yahweh. So I wouldn't say they're, yeah, they're
so
one
so
and the
they're
same.
they're one in the sense that they are the same ontological being and
Yes,
entity, right?
exactly.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, we can go into instances where we can somewhat kind of see that, but the thing is though is that because English is such a reductive language, things that are translated, for instance, as one, uh doesn't necessarily mean the same across the board, right? So like in Matthew
Oh,
19, it talks about the oneness of marriage, or how Adam and Eve are one in Genesis 2.
well,
So
I'm just saying, is there a specific example where Elyon is mentioned and it's not Yahweh?
I mean,
Like
I
if you
just
go
read
to
it in Deuteronomy 32.
no, you're actually misinterpreting that verse right there. It's not actually saying that. And if you go to say Psalm 97 verse 9, who's
Psalm 97 verse 9. All right, let's go ahead and go that there.
yeah.
All right. Psalm 97 9. Let's go there. Okay. For you, O Lord, are the most high over all the earth. You are exalted above all, far above all gods. So in this case, it would be, this is specifically talking about Yahweh, or Hashem, or
Exactly.
Adonai. El Elyon is not
No, no,
mentioned at
it's
all
not.
in this.
It's no, no, it's not. It's
Well,
not.
I have the
It's not
so
Adonai.
we can pull up the
I
Hebrew
have it. I have it.
interlinear. We can pull up the Hebrew
I have
interlinear,
it too.
and
It says
Elyon's not mentioned at
no,
all in
no,
the
no,
in this concept of the Dead
no,
Sea
no,
Scrolls.
no, 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 no. You're Monty. It says Yahweh Elyon is what it says. The text says Yahweh Elyon.
So again, like what would this say in the Dead Sea Scrolls? Because again, if we're looking at the
No, no,
Masoretic
no.
text,
Don't.
if we're looking at the Masoretic
You're
text,
shifting
I'm
there.
not. I'm not.
You're
The
shifting.
Masoretic text is contradictory to the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's my point. I'm not
Okay. Do
shifting.
you
What
want to
does the Dead
go?
Sea Scrolls say?
Do you want to go to? Do you want to go to Genesis 14:22?
Well, what? No, no, no. What does the Dead Sea Scrolls say in regards to this verse in Psalm?
The variant is sons of Israel versus sons of
That's a
God. That's
very
the variant. The
significant
variant.
variant. That's a very significant
No, but
variant.
I'm not. You and I are not disagreeing on that point. We're disagreeing on who Elion is. You're separating Elion from Yahweh.
So
Are you
again,
familiar
let's
with Mark's?
again, I'm asking, what does this particular passage say in the Dead Sea Scrolls? What does it say in the Qumran
Okay,
text? Because if you're going based on,
I just told you
no,
what it
you
said.
didn't. You basically
I told
that
you what
was
it said. It said sons of
so
God.
the NIV uses the Masoretic text. It doesn't use the
I'm
Qumran text.
disregarding. I'm disregarding the NIV. It's just what I had on hand. I don't agree with the NIV. That's not the point. I told you I read out the ESV, which has sons of God, which I agree with.
Okay.
Just like the Septuagint. Yeah. And so what I'm saying is Genesis 14:22. Who's Elion?
All right. So in Genesis 14:22, let's see here.
Yep.
Let's see. So again, let's go to see. Genesis 14:22. Then the king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the persons, but take the goods yourself." But Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have sworn to God, the Most High, maker of heaven and earth." So in Hebrew, this is specifically saying El Elyon.
It's saying I have a Hebrew interlinear too. Like, are
Again, this
you
is based off
saying
the
that
Qumranic text. This is based off the Qumran text.
okay, so are you trying to say that it's not saying Yahweh is Elion, Elion in 14:22?
And that's exactly what I'm saying. They are two separate entities.
Oh.
That is the that is based off the Qumranic text. And I am looking at the chat Alua. And I do want to kind of pull this up because this is someone that from the comments pointed out here.
14:22 literally says Lord, all caps, which is Yahweh, God Most High. So Elion. So literally 14:22 reads Yahweh Elion.
So again, that's
Any
based off
Monty,
that's based off of the Masoretic text, not the Qumran text. The Masoretic texts have been blown out of the water by the Qumran text.
so what what version goes? What version are you saying doesn't go by the Masoretic text
Currently, the
that
New
goes by the
Revised
Dead Sea
Standard Version
Scrolls?
updated edition. It's updated every year based off of new research, based off the
Bro,
manuscripts that are available.
I literally looked at the Hebrew interlinear of that verse.
On
So
the
I don't know
Masoretic
if you're
text, but
being
not the Qumranic text. That's the issue. The issue is that you're relying on the Masoretic text and not the Qumranic. The Qumranic being much older, and when compared with the Masoretic text has been shown because of what we've found in the Dead Sea Scrolls and those caves in Qumran, that the Masoretic text is not accurate, that they have been tampered with.
all right, man. We're gonna have to agree to disagree on that. Where I think that you're shifting a little bit because the Bible does call Yahweh Elyon.
Not according to the
Are you
Qumranic
familiar with?
text. That's again.
I don't even know which manuscript you're talking about because there's so many different
Those are
manuscripts.
the manuscripts found in the caves in Qumran that we commonly
How
call the
many? How
Dead Sea
many?
Scrolls. This is what is being used
Do you
by
know,
scholars to
bro? The
update the
Dead
New
Sea
Revised
Scrolls.
Standard Version each year.
Yeah, but there's variants found within the Dead Sea Scrolls of different books.
Sure. We don't, as Latter-day
So
Saints, we
you're
don't
being.
believe in the infallibility of Scripture.
I know. Well, that's fine, but I think you're being. I think you're trying to find something to agree with your position when that's not what the text actually says. Just like when I said Psalm 97
So
verse 9.
the oldest available manuscripts being disagreeing with the Masoretic text
You have.
is somehow
Are you trying to say you have Qumran text right in front of you? Is that
I
what
mean,
you're trying to
digital
tell me?
versions, but at the same time, I don't necessarily need it because we have the scholarship and the translation within the New
Uh,
Revised Standard Version.
all right. Do you know who Mark Smith is? Mark, God in Translation.
Sounds familiar, but I'm having trouble placing him.
Okay, so his whole thing is that chapters like Deuteronomy 32 show like vitriol traits of, say, polytheism. But he specifically says that this passage here, for the composer of this passage, did not intend Elyon and Yahweh to be separate figures. And he's not an evangelical. He even admits, like all people, that by the time this was composed for the Hebrews, Elyon and Yahweh were one and the same.
Depending on which era you're referring to. Because again, this also is completely like if you're going to look at Second Temple era, like post Josiah reforms, absolutely that would be 100% correct. But prior to the Babylonian exile during the First Temple, that's not the case at all.
Well, Deuteronomy is prior to
It depends on
the
not
Babylonian exile.
necessarily because again, like the with the text that we have, it's closer to like the way that stylometry has been shown. Deuteronomy doesn't really match the style of the other four books of Moses or the other parts of the Torah. It actually is far more in line with post Babylon writing.
Well, hey, okay, well, I'm saying that it was pre-Babylon writing, and we have certain examples of like things that have popped probably in a proto-Hebraic script. I'll accept that. Well, because like orthography writing changes over time. So what we have now, post-Babylon or Qumran scrolls, probably isn't what Deuteronomy looked like pre-Babylon, just because like script and the way like Hebrew has changed over time. But absolutely, I would say that we have, I think, some of our oldest uh kind of things from the Dead Sea Scrolls that we have are from Deuteronomy, actually. Correct me if
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
there's a lot here, but that's kind of the issue though, is that like with a lot of what we have, yeah, the Deuteronomy that we have in the Qumranic text, again, because they're so different compared to the Masoretic text. I mean, just what we read in Deuteronomy 30 or 32, that has a lot of issues there, right? But
All right.
yeah, so but the issue at hand is, is Deuteronomy actually the real fifth book of Moses? And there's a lot of there like
Or
the scholarly is consensus is fairly split on that. Some say that it's a forged book, and that the real fifth book of Moses is the Assumption of Moses, whereas the other half are like, no, 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 this is legitimate. But that's the thing, is that, again, when we're looking at things, especially from stylometric analyses, and comparing to what we just have, even from the Qumranic text, even from the Masoretic text, the voices of the first 4 books of the Torah compared to Deuteronomy, they're very different. And if we are to believe, at least traditionally, that Moses wrote all 5 books, well, how could Moses write about his own death? Like,
Well,
really?
I mean, yeah, so I would say there's never a consensus on anything biblical,
Mhm.
right? And so if you go to scholarship in general about the Book of Mormon, I'm sure you'll get a lot of critical
Oh, sure.
scholarship. But if we talk about, yeah, okay, so if we're being fair, but like likely if we had when it says, and God had Moses write all down the words in this book and put in such and such, obviously he didn't record his death, so there's no problem being like an addendum where, say, Joshua recorded Moses' death and placed it on there. That's all speculative. We can't actually say one way or the other how that happened, but generally scholarship is always going to be very critical anyways, all things biblical. So, and there's never a
It depends,
consensus
but yeah.
if we're being honest. So let's go back to Deuteronomy 32. When the Most High, Elion, gave the nations to the gods, who are you saying those other gods are?
Well, we don't know the names of all of them, but I mean, we have some. I mean, for instance, Moab was
Okay.
given Chemosh. All
Okay.
right. So, in fact, we could actually read within 2 Kings 3 how Chemosh actually defeated the God of Israel.
I mean, I'd love to go
Mhm.
there, but let's just finish Deuteronomy 32 and then we'll jump to 2 Kings if
Yeah.
you want.
But
Go down to
yeah, go ahead.
Deuteronomy, go down to verse 17, Deuteronomy 32:17.
Okay.
What does it say?
All right. So Deuteronomy 32:17. They sacrifice to demons, not God, to deities they have never known, to new ones recently received, whom your ancestors had not feared.
Right. Well, so depend what version you read or whatever, it's saying they sacrificed to demons who were no gods. So the text is saying that this Elohim, this group of Elohim, is species demonic, as in this is not actually a god. They were no gods. These gods that you thought you were worshiping were actually demons. That's the species of those Elohim in verse 8.
See, that unfortunately wouldn't necessarily work, because we're talking about other entities that actually were divine, right? So again, going back to what I mentioned earlier about Chemosh, there's no indication that Chemosh was a demon. In fact, that the concept of
Well,
demon, the word demon, didn't even exist until the late 2nd century. So that wouldn't have even
well,
existed even.
the context of the word that's being used in Deuteronomy 32 is absolutely rendered
Yeah,
demons.
in
And
today's
so
vernacular, sure. But again, within the context of what
yeah,
we're looking at, demons wouldn't have been a thing.
but the verse specifically says this is who they were. They
Translated
were
into
no
English,
gods.
yes. But again, we have to look at the
Okay,
context of when this was supposedly written.
that is the
But
context.
again, no,
Monty,
no,
that is the
Rudy, because
context.
again, the context of when this was written, the 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 context of when this is written, they would have had no concept of what the word demon or daemon would have meant.
They knew they weren't gods.
No, that's reading something into it that wouldn't be there. They absolutely
No, that's
believed in
what the
other
text,
deities,
that's
otherwise they wouldn't have been sacrificed to them.
Monty, that's absolutely what the text is saying,
In
that you
English.
thought you were
In
worshiping.
English.
No, in Hebrew, whatever, it doesn't make a
The
difference.
concept
You
again, the
thought you were
concept of daemon didn't exist until the 2nd century.
Did the concept of angels exist?
Yes.
Okay.
Just because angels existed didn't necessarily mean the concept of demons did, though. This is the
Okay, but
historical
maybe they just,
context. So again, we can't divorce the scripture from his historical context.
well, maybe their interpretation of demons was saying angels that went rogue, just like in Ezekiel 28 when he talks about cherub who went on high. And he said, on the day I created you. So this is a created being that was beautiful that ended up rebelling. So the context is you are going to come at it with your presuppositions because you're looking at it through a very specific hermeneutic. But I'm telling you right there in the passage 17, it's telling you these aren't gods. They're species demonic. Or you could say fallen, and whatever you want to say, but they aren't gods.
So here's the problem here is that, again, they would still recognize them as gods. That's the problem. The translation we have in the English, again, this is a translation thing. It says demons in English, yes, but even in the Hebrew, like Proto-Hebrew would have had no concept of what demon was. All right?
Well, that's well, proto, what's the Hebrew word used there? I don't want to, I'm afraid to like
Sedim.
get out of
So the
like this,
Sedim.
huh?
It's
Sidim.
Sedim.
Okay, Sidim. So it's not Malak, it's not Elohim. So you have to infer what these other entities, spiritual entities are. But in the passage, he tells you they aren't gods. The ones that you thought you were offering to are not gods.
So again, within the context of what we're looking at here, okay.
I'm given the
Again,
context.
so they were they were making sacrifice to real spiritual beings that were not Yahweh. This isn't worshiping fake gods. These were gods to them. These were real gods to them.
No, I don't disagree.
And
I don't
so
disagree with
so
that.
yeah, so to them, again, given what we have earlier, so saying that they were demons or devils or whatever, again, that's a translation error. Okay, they
Okay.
refer to these as gods, meaning that they were not sacrificing or giving sacrifices to their God, as in the God of Israel.
Okay. Hey, we can move on to something else. I think that they might have recognized them as gods, but what Yahweh is saying is that, hey, they're not gods. I'm species specific, as Michael Heiser would say. They're not of the same species. They're something entirely different. So while people are deceived and they could be worshiping Kamash as a god, he is actually no god at all. So I think
He's
that's
not
what
the
the Bible
God.
is
He's not
actually
the God
teaching.
of Israel. That's the thing, is that he's the
He's
God
not a
of
god.
Moab. And again, like we go into
Well,
2 Kings 3, Chemosh
let's
defeated
go.
the God of Israel. The God of Moab
Okay,
defeated the God of Israel in 2 Kings 3.
where does it say? Where does it say Kamash defeated
Okay,
Yahweh?
let's go to 2 Kings 3.
Let's
All
go.
right. All right. So this would so we can go ahead and start in verse 21. So at this point in time, right? The Israelites and some of their vassal states are going to war against Moab, and they're basically running roughshod over them. So starting in verse 21, when all the Moabites heard that the kings had come up to fight against them, who were all able to put on armor from youngest to the oldest, were called out and drawn up on the frontier. When they rose early in the morning and the sun shone upon the water, the Moabites saw the water opposite of them as red as blood. They said, "This is blood. The kings must have fought together and killed one another. And now then, Moab to the spoil." But when they came to the camp of Israel, the Israelites rose up and attacked the Moabites, who fled before them. As they entered Moab, they continued the attack. The cities they overturned, and on every good piece of land, and everyone threw a stone until it was covered. Every spring of water they stopped up, and every good tree they felled. Only at Kir Hareseth did the stone walls remain until the slingers surrounded and attacked. When the king of Moab saw that the battle was going against him, he took with him 700 swordsmen to break through the opposite the king of Edom, but they could not. Then he took his firstborn son, who was to succeed him, and offered him as a burnt offering on the wall. And great wrath came upon Israel, so they withdrew from him and returned to their own land.
Okay, so where in there does it say that Kamash defeated Yahweh?
So this goes into the context of what happened in the beginning of the chapter, where the prophet Elisha prophesies that, with the strength of the God of Israel, they would overtake all of Moab. But this final battle,
So,
with the sacrifice that the king of Moab did to Chemosh, this is where that Chemosh actually defeated the God of Israel.
so I'll say one thing. So nowhere in the text does it say that Kamash defeated Yahweh. But however, I'm not trying to be like cute here, but have you actually read the Bible front to back?
A few times.
Okay, a few times. let's go to the beginning of chapter 3 because you start in the middle of chapter 3.
Well, that was the paragraph that was relevant. But yeah, I mean, the beginning of
No,
chapter
no, no,
3,
no, no,
this is where
no, no,
Jehoshaphat
no.
goes to Elisha.
No. So in the beginning of the chapter, so the pericope in the ESV starts at the beginning of chapter 3, not in the middle of chapter 3. So if you read it, and I don't have an ESV, I'd have to go upstairs and get it. But out of the NIV, it says, Joram, son of Ahab, became king of Israel and Samaria in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and he reigned 12 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, but not as his father and mother had done. He got rid of the sacred stone of Baal that his fathers made. Nevertheless, he clung to the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. He did not turn away from them. So the context of chapter 3 actually starts in the beginning of the chapter, not in the middle of the chapter. Are you familiar with
It
God's
wasn't it
warning
wa
to the Israelites?
Jehoshaphat was the one who went to Elisha, not Jehoram. Jehoram was the king of Israel, who was a vassal state of Judah.
So I read out of verse 3, I was just reading the NIV. Nevertheless, he clung to the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat. So
Yeah,
yes, it's
that's not
talking
talking about
about,
Jehoshaphat. That's talking about Jehoram and his father
okay,
Jeroboam.
it's irrelevant.
No, that's
Monty,
it
it's
is
irrelevant.
relevant though. Because
No, it's irrelevant.
we're
No, no, no.
looking at who is the God of Israel, and the God of Moab,
Monty,
Chemosh,
hear
defeated.
me out.
No, because again, you're trying to
Monty,
insert context that
no, no,
that's
no.
not relevant to
Monty,
what happened.
Monty, let me finish,
What
please.
happened at Moab?
Let me finish. No, let me finish, please. Just give me 30 seconds. So in the very beginning of the chapter, it talks about how Israel continued in their sins. And so that's the pretext to why they were defeated by Moab and say Chemosh or whatever. But all throughout like the Hebrew Bible, it says God raised up foreigners to defeat the Israelites, such as Assyria. If you could just stay in 2 Kings 17 and 24, both chapters, it talks about how Yahweh raised up
What
the
does this
Assyrians
have to
to
do
over.
with what the Moabites did to defeat
I'm
Israel?
giving you the
You're not
context.
though. You're not.
Monty, you skipped over the
No.
very beginning of the
Okay,
chapter.
no.
I'm giving you the
So again, no,
context.
you're not though, because again, we can even see that Elisha said, "I don't want to have anything to do with anyone but Jehoshaphat." The only reason why he's entertaining the kings of Israel and
Monty,
Edom is because Jehoshaphat is there with him. It was Jehoshaphat that vouched for them.
Monty, can you read one? Can you read a passage for me, please?
Are we going to stick to Second Kings 3?
Deuteronomy. No, Deuteronomy 28,
Okay, so
25.
again, what does this have to do with Chemosh overtaking
I'm
Israel?
telling you, because you're stripping one chat. The Bible. So the Old Testament is 39 books. What's it like?
The
900
Bible is
chapters?
not a
Who knows how many
continuous
verses?
narrative, Rudy. What are you talking about?
It does. It
It
is a
is
continuous
not.
narrative.
It
That's
is a
where you and I
collect. No,
disagree.
what do you think the Bible is,
No,
Rudy? It is not a continuous narrative.
it is. It is absolutely 100% a continuous narrative.
No one would agree with
100.
that
And
unless you're inserting theology there that's
I'm.
not there.
Hey,
Where do we get that
listen.
indication that the
Well,
Bible's continuous narrative?
can you read a verse for me, please?
Not if it's
Do me
outside
the
of Kings
courtesy.
3. Because again,
So
we're going
see, do you
outside of the
see,
context here. You're trying
Monty?
to insert and proof text something
Okay,
in there that is not part of the context.
Monty, you're
I'm
dancing because
not.
you don't want to go
I'm
there.
not, because you're
You're
inserting a
dancing.
theology in there that's not part of what's actually in the biblical
No,
text. You're inserting a
because it's
presupposition. No,
destroy.
Rudy, your presupposition is that the Bible is univocal, that it's a continuous narrative. It's not. There's a reason why the Latin-based languages have Bible as the root for a library. That's exactly what the Bible is. It is an anthology. It is a library
Okay,
of separate texts
all right.
written by separate authors to separate peoples. To say it's a continuous narrative is is ignorant at best.
No, it's not ignorant at best. You have to view it that way for you to pull
It's
verses
not
out of
just
context so
me.
that no one will know what you're
This is not
doing.
just me. It's not just Latter-day Saints. It's anyone who is an honest study of the Bible who act, and
No,
even
that's not
biblical
true. You're
scholars. You can, like, even evangelical
Monty,
scholars will
you're
point there.
asserting something that's not true.
Where do we get the indication that the Bible is a continuous narrative? Where do we see that?
Because Second Kings would have known the books that came prior to it, such
What
as
does that have
Deuteronomy.
to
So they
do
weren't
with
ignorant.
Moab, with the God of Moab
Let me
overtaking the God of Israel? What does that have to do with that?
does Second Kings not talk about things that happened prior to it and pulling from just like
We
Chronicles
are
does?
talking about what happened with the God of Israel being defeated by the
I'm
God of
giving you the
Moab.
context.
No, the context here
Monty,
is that
you
the God of Moab defeated the God of Israel after the king of Moab sacrificed his son. That's the context.
all right. Can I read that verse then?
And go ahead.
Deuteronomy
Go
20.
ahead. But this has
Okay.
nothing to do with what we're talking about as far as Moab defeating Israel.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Deuteronomy 28:25. The Lord will cause you to be defeated before your enemies. You will come at them from one direction, but flee from them in seven, and you will become a thing of horror to all the kingdoms of the earth. That do you know what Deuteronomy 27:28 are even talking about?
This has nothing to do with the context of what is happening
Sure it does.
with Elisha prophesying to Jehoshaphat and to the kings of Israel and Edom about
Monty,
what to do about Moab. This has nothing to do with
Monty,
that.
Monty, you read something into the text saying that Yahweh was defeated by Kamesh, and I asked you to show me a specific
That's
verse.
not reading into the text. That's what the text says.
The text, then show me the verse. You
Verse
couldn't provide the verse.
27. 2 Kings 3:27.
Where you did, it doesn't say that. You're adding that into the
Great
text
wrath
because
came
you don't.
upon Israel. Why would great wrath come upon
So what?
Israel when they were having
I'll
victory
tell you
after
why.
victory after victory?
No, great wrath came upon Israel because they continued in their sin, and God
Where is
pulled
that
back
in
His
the, no,
hand,
that's
guiding
reading into the
hand.
text, Rudy. Where is that in the text?
That's the very beginning of the
No,
chapter. It says they were continuing in their
No,
sin.
he's not talking about Jehoshaphat.
Come on,
No,
at least be honest
I am
here.
no,
You
no,
got
no,
to
no,
be honest.
Rudy, look in the mirror. Okay, if you're gonna make statements like that, look in the mirror. Here's what I'm saying. In the 18th year of King Jehoshaphat of Judah, Jehoram son of Ahab, king over Israel. Okay, now they have. I'm not using the JST actually. I'm using the NRSV, Jorfage. But again, they go to Elisha. Why do they go to Elisha at
Okay.
the behest of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah? In fact, Elisha, starting in verse 13, what have I to do with you? Referencing King Jehoram, and even to the king of
All right.
Edom. Go to your father's prophets or
So,
to your mother's. He's telling the kings of Israel and Edom to go to their father's prophets, not to him. But the only reason why he's entertaining them
Monty,
is because of Jehoshaphat. And he prophesied, and listen, and this is the context here. The prophecy that Elisha
no.
gives, as the Lord of hosts lives, whom I serve, were it not that I have regard for King Jehoshaphat of Judah, I would give you neither look nor a glance, but give me a musician. And while the musician was playing, the hand of the Lord came upon him, and he said, Thus says the Lord, I will make this wadi full of pools. For thus says the Lord, you shall see neither wind nor rain, but the wadi shall be filled with water, so that you shall drink, you and your army and your animals. This is only a trifle in the sight of the Lord, for he will also hand Moab over to you. You shall conquer every fortified city and every choice city. Every good tree shall you fell, all springs of water shall you stop up, and every good piece of land you shall ruin with stones. The next day, about that time, the morning offering, suddenly water began to flow from the direction of Edom until the country was filled with water. Okay, the sins of Israel and Edom are irrelevant to what Elisha is
No, it's
saying.
completely
No, it's
irrelevant.
not. Because again, in this case, Elisha is saying they will conquer Moab. And what happens in verse 27? As soon as the king of
Because they
Moab,
continued in their
there
sin,
is
Monty.
nothing within the text that suggests as such. Again, if that were
Monty,
the case, then we
the
would
whole chapter,
again, you are inserting something into the
Monty,
text.
the chapter,
Why
no,
did
you
Elisha?
you
No,
started
Rudy.
off.
Why did Elisha entertain the kings of Edom and Israel? Why did he even do that?
Okay, you're trying to dance around because you skipped over the very beginning of the chapter. What was happening?
Because again, just because the king
Monty,
of Israel and of Edom were doing something bad, they were still vassal states of Judah. They were paying taxes to Judah. They lifted their banners for Judah. That's the reason why Elisha entertained them, was because Jehoshaphat, we see nothing of what Jehoshaphat was doing. Only what Jehoram. We have
Monty,
nothing about Edom.
you're missing the forest for the trees, bro. Like you're trying to
Insert
fit a
something that
square.
happened 1,000 years
No,
before
that's what you're
with what
doing.
happened in
That's
Kings.
exactly what you're doing.
I'm
You're
sticking
trying
to
to
what
squid a
Kings
fear.
is. I'm sticking to what it says in
No, you're
Kings.
not. Okay, Okay, can I go to other passages in Second Kings, or do you only want to
Let's
stick to
stick
this
to
one
this one
chapter?
chapter because that's where the context is.
See,
This
see,
is what this is the. This,
no, it's the same author.
how do we know
You
that?
see, this is
How
what.
do we know that?
Okay, if I go to Deuteronomy, you say no, it's a collection of chopped up books that
That's
have no
exactly what
relation. I go,
that's exactly
okay,
what the Bible
can
is.
I
It's
go
an
to?
anthology.
I go, can I stay within Second Kings? No, how do we know it's the same author? I'm going to give you the context, even though it doesn't actually
I'm not.
say
The
Yahweh's
context is
defeated
right
by
there,
Kamash.
Rudy. It's right
You cut out the
there.
context. You went in the beginning of the chapter.
It only
Come
talks.
on, bro, be
I
honest.
am being honest, because again,
No, you're
where does
not.
it talk about the sins of Jehoshaphat?
It's talking about the sins of the
No, it's
people.
talking about the sin.
Israel as a
It's
nation.
talking about the sin. It's not talking about the sins of the nation. It's talking about the sins of the individual Jehoram.
No, it said he caused Israel to commit the sins.
Yeah, because
he did not turn away from them.
This is Jehoram,
The
not
nation was
Jehoshaphat.
sinning. The nation
And
was
that is
sinning.
why Elisha said, "What have I to do with you? Go to your own prophets."
No, Monty, there's a reason why you only want to stick to one half of one chapter and you don't want to go anywhere
Where
else.
does it
Just admit it.
say that Jehoshaphat was the one sinning? Because this is where Elisha is saying. Elisha was sent to the kingdom of Judah.
And I asked you, you stuck within like a half of a chapter. You don't want to go anywhere else. And then you read into it that Yahweh was defeated by Kamash. Anyone can go there and read that and be like,
That's
you know
exactly
what? It
what
actually doesn't say that.
says. What
It doesn't
where
say
okay,
that.
what does it mean then when it
It
says
doesn't say
great
that.
wrath came upon Israel after Moab had his
So
son
that's
sacrificed? Why does it say
so
that?
you're reading into the text. You're
I'm
reading
not
into the
reading
text right there. It
anything into
doesn't
the
say
text.
Yahweh is
This is
defeated.
exactly what the text says.
It doesn't say, I'm telling
Then the
you
king of Moab took his
specifically,
firstborn son who was to succeed him and offered him as a burnt offering on the wall.
Monty,
And great wrath came upon Israel after the burnt offering. And so they withdrew from Moab and returned to
Monty.
their own land. So where does it indicate that anything other than the sacrifice to Chemosh was the reason why they were defeated?
At the very beginning of the chapter when it
That
said that
is
they continue to
irrelevant to
sin.
what happened here, because
It's
it
not
absolutely
irrelevant.
is, because again, we have the prophecy from Elisha where regardless of what happened, he said that he would deliver up Moab into their hands. And that doesn't happen.
I could probably give you, Monty, I could probably give you about 10 verses where it says that if when they sin, God releases them into their enemies' hands. And you don't want me to go to any of them. You want to stick to one half of one chapter and cut out the very beginning.
We can
Is what
go
you want to
read
do.
the entire chapter, but again, in order to understand it,
That's the
the
context.
reason why, no,
They were
okay,
sinning.
Rudy, again, the issue at hand is the reason why Jehoram was brought up was because he was with Jehoshaphat. And again, looking at what Elisha said, he told the kings of Edom and Israel to go back to their own lands and to their own prophets. But then says, you know what?
Okay.
Because you're with Jehoshaphat, the only reason I'm going to tolerate you is because you're with Jehoshaphat. And it's Jehoshaphat who's speaking, not Jehoram. Jehoshaphat said that he wants the Lord who has summoned the three kings over, or no, it was Jehoram. Elisha said to the king of Israel, what have I to do with you? Go to your father's prophets or to your mother's. But the king of Israel said to him, no, it is the Lord who has summoned these three kings to hand over to Moab. And this is where Elisha says, if it wasn't for the regard I have for King Jehoshaphat of Judah, I would neither give you look nor glance. And this is where he gives the prophecy that he would hand Moab over to them. Moab would be given to their hands. But what happens?
Monty,
the king of Moab sacrifices his son on the wall of the capital city. There is something that happens. Israel had a great wrath come upon them, and that didn't happen until after the burnt offering. That's the sequence of events.
Yes.
Okay. The great wrath didn't come after
in that verse,
the burnt offering.
So in that verse, it said Israel had great wrath come upon them. It never says that Yahweh did. It never says Yahweh had great wrath come upon them.
Why did great wrath come upon them? What happened before?
Because they were sinning.
No. What happened before that great wrath came upon them?
I'm telling you
what
why.
happened?
I'm
It
telling
says
you
so in
why.
the verse, Rudy. What happened?
The very first, the
No,
beginning.
in the very first. No,
Monty,
Rudy. In the very verse, it
you don't want
says
me to talk because you know that you got
no,
caught here.
because again,
You know you got
no, I
caught.
didn't get caught. You're inserting something that doesn't
Yes, you
belong there.
did.
Here's the thing: in that very verse where it says, "Great
Come
wrath
on,
came
bro.
upon Israel," what happened before then? There wasn't wrath upon Israel before this point. Before great,
Yes, there was.
not in this
Have you
battle,
ever read the
not with the
Bible?
context of what
Have
we're
you ever
reading
read the
here. I
Bible?
have, Rudy, and it's very clear that you haven't. Here's the thing. Then he took it. Then the king of Moab took his firstborn son, who succeeded him, and offering as a burnt offering on the wall. And great wrath came upon Israel. This is the sequence of events. Great wrath didn't come upon Israel until the king of Moab sacrificed his son on the wall to Chemosh.
Listen, I'll accept your point that great wrath came upon Israel, but great wrath never came upon Yahweh. Yahweh was never defeated. Yahweh relinquished his
This
protection
was a
from his
prophecy
people because
given
they
by
were continuing.
Elisha that
Let me finish a
no,
point.
because again,
You're talking,
you're
Monty, you're
looking
talking over
at the
me here, bud.
context here, Rudy.
That is the
It's
context,
not.
Monty. That's why you're talking over
Not
me. You're
though.
talking over me because you know
It's
I'm right.
no. You're wrong because again,
You're talking over me
again,
because you know I'm right.
again. What is the sin of Judah? What is the sin of Judah, who is the one who is serving the God of Israel in 2 Kings 3? What is their sin? Because they are the ones who are essentially the ones calling their banners. That's the reason why Elisha is saying, I don't want to have anything to do with you. Go to your own prophets. But because Jehoshaphat is there, I'm going to give you this. The prophecy Elisha gives, because of the respect Elisha has for Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, is that he will deliver the Moabites into their hands. This is what it says in verse
No.
18.
Yeah.
He will deliver the
Okay.
Moabites into their hands. That's not what happens in verse 27.
No, you're missing the point. I don't disagree with you that Israel was delivered into Moab's hands.
No,
I'm
that's
telling
the
you the
opposite.
reason
Opposite.
why. No, Yahweh delivered them into, basically, effectively, Yahweh delivered them into the Moabites' hands because he stopped protecting them because they were sinning. That's what it's
not the
saying.
context of the
Yes,
passage.
it is.
You're
Hey,
you're
with all due
trying to
respect,
insert
man,
something at the beginning that's not there. Because again,
that's
that would
exactly
go
what you're doing,
against
Monty.
the
Monty,
prophecy that Elisha gave. Where is Israel's
Monty,
sins
that's exactly
mentioned
what you're
from
doing, not me.
where is Israel's sins mentioned from the time that Elisha gives the prophecy to the time that they're defeated?
Dude, like, what do you, are you talking to, Israel is literally the antagonist of the story. They're the bad guy that
They're a
God has to
vassal
keep
state
rescuing
of
from, like,
Judah who is serving the God of
what?
Israel. The kingdom of Israel is not serving the God of Israel, despite their name. They're not
Exactly.
serving the God of Israel.
Exactly.
But Judah
Listen, this is,
is. And this is why
yes,
Jehoram talks
Judah
to
on
Elisha.
average has better kings than Israel. I don't see what your point
Okay,
is.
so let me ask you
You're
this. Where is the condition?
you're
No,
dancing
okay,
away from
so
the
Elisha,
text.
okay, what is the prophecy Elisha gives? What is the prophecy Elisha gives?
I don't know, bro. Go
I mean,
ahead.
I
Tell
just
me.
read it, but I mean,
Okay.
okay. So
Nevertheless, he clung to the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he caused Israel to commit. He did not turn them
that's
away from them.
not because
That's
they're not
literally
serving the
verse
God of
3.
Israel, but Israel is a vassal state of Judah.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So
All
here's
right.
the deal. Okay, so
So
again, Rudy, what is the
hey,
prophecy?
you can't have
Rudy,
you
what is the
listen.
prophecy that Elisha gives to the kings of Judah, Israel, and Edom? What is it?
Listen, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Because when we went to Deuteronomy 32, you said Israel was the Lord's portion.
Yes.
And now you're saying, oh, well, what is the God they're serving?
Yes. That's
It's
exactly it.
Yahweh.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be
Yahweh is the God
Yahweh.
of Israel. He is the God of the
Okay.
house of Israel.
So if
He is the God of the
so
house
if
of
they're not,
Jacob.
yes, and so if they're not serving Yahweh, they're serving false gods and they're
They're
sinning and
serving a
rebelling
God that
against
was not
him.
apportioned to them.
Whatever. So that's their sin, which
They're
is why
let me put it to you this way. Let me
Yahweh
put it to you this
delivers
way.
them over
Here,
to.
so Rudy, again, what is the prophecy that Elisha gives in 2 Kings 3?
Monty, I think
What is the
I don't
prophecy that
know
Elisha
because
gives? I can read it
you're trying
again.
to
I
stick
can
to.
read it again.
Go ahead and
Okay.
read it. Go.
Second,
I'm reading.
Second
I'm going to
Kings.
go to the very beginning of the chapter where the
Okay, so
context
the
is.
context is the prophecy. The context is the
Oh,
prophecy.
come on, man. The context is Israel's sin.
No, it's
That's
not.
the context.
Okay, so
Yes,
let
it
me.
is.
So hold on. Let point to me where within Elisha's prophecy that it says, "But because of your sin, this won't happen." Let's see here. He said, "Thus says the Lord."
I can go to other areas in the Bible.
We're looking at this specific prophecy regarding the battle with Moab, the
No.
war with Moab.
So it's the.
So this specific.
So it's the same.
Okay.
No. So if you want to take Yahweh, only Yahweh's words from
We are
2
looking
Kings
at this
3.
particular event.
You don't want to accept Yahweh's words
Rudy,
anywhere else in the biblical
we are
corpus.
talking. Rudy,
So if
we are talking
Yahweh
about this particular event.
No, but you got to add context because you want to stick to one thing and say, "Oh, what is the prophecy of such and such?"
Okay, so Rudy,
You're trying to muddy
I'm
the
not
waters
muddying the
right
waters
now.
here. This is what it says in the text. All right, that the
I read
prophecy.
the text. We read the
Okay,
text.
so what is the prophecy Elisha gives then?
Which
So
verse?
start in verse 16.
Okay. This is what the Lord says: make this valley full of ditches, for this is what the Lord says: you will see neither wind nor rain, and yet this valley will be filled with water, and you and your cattle and your other animals will drink. This is an easy thing in the eyes of the Lord. He'll also hand Moab over to you. You will overthrow every fortified city and every major town. You will cut down every good tree and all the springs and ruins and every good field with stones. The next morning, about the time sacrifice there, it was water overflowing from the direction of Edom, and the land was filled with water. Now all the Moabites heard
Okay, so that's
that the
prophecy.
kings
Prophecy
had
ends
come
at
to.
verse 20.
Okay.
Okay, so where is it that there's any condition given regarding this?
The condition is whether they sin or not. And I read
Where's the condition stated?
Deuteronomy
No,
28,
where's the
25.
condition stated in Elisha's prophecy?
Well, there's things Moses says that aren't
I'm
directly
not
from the
talking about
Lord.
Moses. I'm
So
talking about Elisha.
I don't know. I'm
There
talking
is no.
about
Okay,
Yahweh.
so
I
again,
don't
we're
really
talking
care
about
what.
the prophecy.
I really don't care what
he?
Elisha
No,
says.
you should. You should,
Why should I?
because this is because this is the context of what happens later on. The context is the prophecy that Elisha gives as a prophet of the God of Israel. So straight up, you said it. You said it straight up. Verse 18. He will hand
but you
Moab
also,
over to you.
Monty, you said that Yahweh was defeated by Chemosh,
Yes,
and
in
you
verse
didn't provide a
27.
verse to say that. It doesn't say that though.
Okay,
Anyone can read it. It says
okay, so what happened before? Again, this goes back to what we were talking about before. What happened before great wrath came upon Israel?
What do you? They were sinning.
That's not
They were
what happened.
sinning.
Because again, that goes against the prophecy.
That is what happened. That's the beginning of the
Where does
chapter.
it indicate within the prophecy of Elisha, which you just read, that this will not happen?
I'm talking about the actions of Israel, and it's contingent of whether they sin
Elisha
and
gave a
follow
false
God
prophecy?
or not. I don't know. Maybe he thought that, like, hey man, like God, I don't know. Maybe.
So Elisha gave a false
I have
prophecy.
no idea. I don't know. I
You
don't
just
know.
read the prophecy.
I'm talking the
You
context.
just read the prophecy. What did Elisha say that the God of Israel would do for them? There are no conditions here. Unless you can point out to me the condition within the prophecy itself, what did the God of Israel say they were going to do?
I'm telling you exactly what Yahweh said they will do if they sin and fall
Again,
after other gods.
you're going outside the context of this particular event, Rudy.
It's not outside the context.
Is.
You want to strip a chapter away from the entire context of the Bible.
There isn't an entire
what you're trying to
context
do.
of the Bible. The Bible is not univocal.
What?
I said, like we established this
Sure
earlier.
It is.
It's not a continuous narrative.
No, we didn't establish this earlier because we point.
Again, where is the condition that Elisha gives in the prophecy?
I can turn that around on you and say, where does the verse say Yahweh was defeated by Chemosh?
Verse 27.
It doesn't say that. Anyone can read it. It doesn't say that.
And
you're reading into the text.
Okay, so no, again, that's not. I'm not reading into the text. This is exactly what the text says. Great wrath didn't come upon Israel until after the king of Moab sacrificed his son.
No,
It's
great
not because
wrath
of what
came upon.
Israel did. It wasn't because of what the armies of Israel did. It was great wrath came upon Israel after the king of Moab sacrificed his son to Chemosh.
I have no problem with that.
So that would mean the God of Israel was defeated.
No, it would mean that the Israelites were defeated, not that the God of Israel, because he had already withdrawn his hand and protection from them because they
Where's
were
that in the
continuing in
text?
sin.
Where's that in the text?
It's all over the Bible, bro. It's
Where's that
literally
in the
everywhere in
text
the
of the
Bible.
regarding the battle with Israel and Moab?
Dude, 2 Kings 17 talks about how God is going to hand his people into Assyria's hand.
Yeah, that's
2 Kings
Assyria,
24
not
says how
Moab.
he's gonna hand.
That's not Moab,
Oh my
Rudy.
goodness.
You're talking
Yeah.
about the battle with Moab, not
So this is the
Assyria.
thing here. This is the thing here. You want to take one half of one chapter and you don't want to talk about anything else in like the Old Testament corpus.
We're
You don't
talking
even want to talk
the
about other
no,
passages in Second Kings.
Rudy, because the other passages of Second Kings are not talking about the battles with Moab.
Oh, okay. Is Moab that much stronger than Assyria or Babylon? Are you kidding me?
Okay, again, we are looking at what is happening here because the point of bringing this up, if you remember,
You're
the point
trying
of
to say
bringing is
Moab was
showcasing that
superior
there
to
were other
Babylon and
gods.
Assyria.
There were other gods within pre-Babylonian understandings of deity,
Species
which
demonic.
means
Species demons.
again, the ancient Hebrews did not have an understanding of demon. The New Testament definition of demon was not a thing until
Well,
the late 2nd century.
Deuteronomy 32:17 makes it clear that they were ontologically different.
In the English translation, not with
No, in the
ancient Hebrew
Hebrew,
understanding.
translation, no, in the Hebrew also, which is why Jews never took a LDS position on what Elohim were.
Second Temple era, maybe.
Well, you're gonna give a maybe what on like 2 powers of heaven or something like that?
Again, we're looking again. I just demonstrated that despite the prophecy that Elisha gave in 2 Kings 3, because again, this is the thing. We can't add in Assyria and Babylon later on.
Sure, we can. It's in the
No,
same book.
we can't.
Same
Just because it's
author.
in the same book doesn't mean it's the same event.
Same book, same author.
It's not the same event.
It's the same God. And you're
It's
trying to say
not the
Moab.
same event, Rudy.
Are you
You're
trying to
trying
say,
to apply different events to this
No.
one event happening with Moab.
Are you trying to say that Moab was more powerful than Babylon or Assyria? Is that what you're trying to
That's
say?
not what I'm saying. I'm using this as an example to showcase that
2
there were
Kings
other
17,
gods.
2 Kings 24.
Again, this is not related to Moab.
You're reading into the text something.
No, Rudy,
You're
you're
reading
trying to
into the
apply
text.
something into the text that is not applicable here.
It is
Babylon
absolutely
and Assyria are not
You
applicable
can't-
to the wars with Moab.
Excuse me, you might be the only person that I've ever heard who says that, oh, none of this other stuff is relevant or applicable. You want to chop up a half of a chapter
No.
and say this is who Yahweh is. He gets defeated.
Of-
When the rest of the biblical
did.
corpus,
He did.
no, he didn't. It doesn't say that, bro. You know it doesn't.
Why are you trying to apply Assyria and Babylon to the wars with Moab? They are completely different events.
You're reading it through a specific hermeneutic. Why are you trying to apply your concept of Elohim to one half of one chapter? When the whole biblical corpus, they don't write that way. They don't think that way.
The biblical corpus doesn't exist. That's
As we have it today. As we have it today.
No, at all.
What are you talking about?
The
What are
biblical
you even
corpus
talking about?
is not a thing. There's no such thing as a biblical corpus. These are separate individual texts written by different authors at different times. In fact, it's very likely that the books of 1st and 2nd Kings were written by several different people, had several different authors.
Monty, I think you're trying to, I don't know what you're trying to do, man, but like anyone can read the chapter, read the rest of Kings, read the rest of the Bible and say, hey, is it more likely that Yahweh relinquished his protection of Israel, or did Yahweh just all of a sudden lose to the God of Moab, even though it doesn't actually say that?
Because it actually does say that. Because again, we
No,
look at the sequence of events.
Text,
where we're looking at the sequence of events, Rudy, is not reading into the text. I'm looking at the sequence of events.
I read you the sequence of events. You skipped over the sequence of events.
No, the sequence of events Israel,
starts at the beginning of
Judah,
the
and
chapter.
Edom. No, Israel. Okay, we're looking at
No,
the
starts in the beginning of the
battles with
chapter.
Moab. We're looking at the battles with Moab. We're looking at the battles with Moab. We're not talking about Assyria. We're not talking about
Yes, we are.
Babylon. Those are different events. Those
The,
are different time periods.
the pericope
Okay.
starts in the beginning of chapter 3 with their
I-
sin, which is irrelevant. If the author didn't think it was relevant, he wouldn't have added it in. Why did he add in?
Because he is the one who talks to Elisha.
Why would he add that in if it wasn't relevant?
Because he is the one who speaks to Elisha, and Elisha is the one who
Why
says,
would he add in?
What do I have to do with you? Go to your father or
Monty,
your mother's prophets.
why
Why are
would
you
he
coming to
add
me?
in? Why would he add in that they were continuing in their sin before he even
Because
starts
the
this whole sequence
context
with
of
Moab?
is regards to what
That's
Elisha
the
tells
context.
him.
That's the
Is
context.
what Elisha tells him. Why are you coming to me? Go to your father's or your mother's prophets. But because of Jehoshaphat, fine. And that's
Okay.
when he gives the prophecy that he would deliver Moab into their hands. Now,
Let
the
me ask you a
context of
question.
everything after that has to do with what is in relation to that prophecy given to Judah, Israel, and Edom.
Let me ask you a question, because even in Psalm 82, when he says that you guys are nothing like me, and nevertheless you're going to die like men, is there anywhere else other than this one chapter you're taking out of context that supports your claim that Yahweh is defeated by other gods?
Not that
Anywhere?
he's necessarily defeated, but that there are other divine entities.
That's not the question, though. Is there anything else to support your sole claim here on 2 Kings 3? Anywhere?
My point of going to 2 Kings 3 is to show that he can be defeated and that he
No.
was.
You're I don't support your premise there, but you're even trying to argue
Because you ignore the context and you're trying to say that the Bible's continuous narrative.
No, you're trying to, even if that was an exception, you're trying to argue that as the norm, but you're taking it out of context. You have one example that doesn't actually say what you're saying it says, and there's nothing else to support your claim.
Rudy, I'm not taking anything out of context. You're
you
trying
gotta
to
give me
insert
some-
other aspects that have nothing to do with the wars with Moab.
Monty, you got to give me something else. You can't just go to this one thing and hang up until we're gonna go back and forth until we're blue in the face, because what you're saying, I totally reject.
This is an example of the God of Israel being, not necessarily being the only God, and that he could be defeated. All right.
Species specific. He is the only Elohim of his species.
Again, I would recommend that you actually read the entire paper, because the conclusion that he reaches
I would
is
recommend.
not bad. So
the title of the paper is literally a critique of Mormonism's use of Psalm 82. So I would recommend that you actually read the paper, since I told you about
and he actually comes to the conclusion that while he may not necessarily agree, we got it right.
Man, like, either you don't understand Michael Heiser's view, or because there's an audience, you're just kind of misconstruing what he's actually saying.
No, so this is exactly what he says. The paragraph, there's only one paragraph in his conclusion. He says, I'm under no delusion that this paper will persuade Latter-day Saints to abandon or adjust their viewpoint. I also expect that many evangelicals will balk at embracing my arguments. Ironically, both sides may take solace in mutually disagreeing with me. That would be fine. What is more important in my mind, to clearly articulate the text and contextualize the Hebrew Bible on its own terms. I leave the Spirit to work when each heart as he sees fit. So, again, he's pointing out that there were actually other gods. They weren't demons, because the ancient Hebrews had no concept of demons.
But yet they
weren't angels either.
Okay, we already talked about the Hebrew, what the Hebrew word for 32:17 was. It says literally they weren't gods. They weren't whatever.
The God of Israel.
No, that's not what it said. You're reading into the text. It says
I'm not reading into the text.
Yes, you are.
They are offered sacrifices to real entities that were not Yahweh. They were not the God of Israel.
Yes,
in other words, it was not the God that was apportioned to them.
Yes, I agree. They were demons, is what it says.
Again, that's a modern English translation, but again, the ancient Hebrews had no concept of it.
Shadim? Okay, they were Shadim. They weren't Elohim. Let's go with that, if you're more comfortable with that. So it doesn't really make a difference.
Could also be construed as Elohim too.
Okay, well, hey, I'm just reading the verse for what it says. So that's all I'm doing. Take it or leave it. But I think it's very clear that the Hebrew Bible does not teach henotheism. because
Well, that's
species
exactly what it
specific
teaches.
Yahweh is
That's
alone.
exactly what that's the thing is though is that again, despite the
You're
fact that he
misusing the
disagrees with the
word.
Latter-day Saint interpretation, that is
No, he
exactly
doesn't.
what Michael
He does
Heiser
not.
points out. That there are other gods in the divine council. The divine council
Yeah.
was real, and that there were other gods there. You have El Elyon, who was the head of the gods, and basically what Psalm 82 is saying, even according to Michael Heiser, that uh, that the uh, that those other gods were not obeying him. They weren't obeying El Elyon except for Yahweh.
Monty, the Septuagint, which Paul quotes, has Psalm 8, the Elohim of Psalm 8, translated to angels because that's how they understood them as. So they're making distinctions even in the time of Paul's day that these are not actually gods, so that people don't get mistaken.
Yeah, again, this is not what the text says.
I'm telling you exactly what the text says and how
you're trying to insert something into the text by pulling something else written by a potentially other author to a different audience.
Why would the Septuagint make the clarification that they weren't Elohim, they were angels then? Why would they do that? If they were ontologically
that's under the
the
indication
same.
that the Septuagint is also accurate.
Okay, well now you're dancing. I'm giving you another example, and you're dancing.
Because again, like I mean, this goes back into the very concept of things like sola scriptura and whether or not Scripture is infallible, even.
Well, what is that? Okay, so now you're moving the goalpost. So now you're saying we can't trust
I'm
Scripture.
not. This is exactly the same standard as the ancient Christians and ancient Hebrews.
Monty, you want to use Scripture to support your claim, like in 2 Kings 3, but then when I use Scripture, you say, well, we don't even know if it's fallible or not. Infallible, where Paul is quoting.
I never made the claim that it was infallible.
Okay,
but
the
you're
thing
using is I can still use Scripture to help support my points. Scripture is still useful for doctrine and for correction. Just because you don't like the context doesn't mean that it's not there.
Well, why does the Septuagint make a clarification that these are angels?
Why does the Dead Sea Scrolls say otherwise?
And why does
the Qumranic text say otherwise?
Come on, man.
No, you come on, because again, the Septuagint doesn't even agree with the Qumranic text, though it is a lot more in line with it, sure. But the Qumranic text, completely obliterates the Masoretic text, and it doesn't even fully agree with the Septuagint.
Well, there's a reason why Jews weren't henotheistic, and Yahweh was
after the Babylonian exile, sure.
You're talking
it wasn't until after the Babylonian exile. This is after the Babylonian exile, they became intolerantly monotheistic.
What evidence do you have of that?
Basic scholarship. I mean, I can go back to Michael Heiser.
What does that mean, basic scholarship? Are you going to appeal to authority? What does that mean, basic scholarship? Give me something. Don't give me.
Again, I told you, like again, that you read several of Michael Heiser's other work, right? This is also it's not just with Michael Heiser, but also Bruce Metzger, Bart Ehrman, Paula Fredrickson. Like they all agree.
These are
just a few off the top of the things here, that the First Temple era were henotheistic. They acknowledged the existence of other gods, of other deities. It wasn't until after the Babylonian exile that they were intolerantly monotheistic, which also would mean that they weren't Trinitarians.
No, you got to give me some, man. You can't just make the claim.
I just gave you 4 scholars.
4 scholars. Come on, Heiser. You brought Heiser into the conversation.
Ehrman, Fredrickson.
Metzger and Ehrman are textual critics. So they're not historians. So let's put their classifications out there at the start. This is what they are.
Where do they claim that they're not historians, or are you just making that claim?
I don't. What is their field of study?
Biblical history.
Not biblical history. It's New Testament Greek manuscripts.
Okay, so how are they examining the text as historical documents?
They're looking at variants, bro.
That's how are they examining them? How are they examining them as historical documents?
Yeah,
in other words, they're looking at it through the lens of historians.
Have you ever read How Jesus Became God? Like, do you really believe that Bart Ehrman's all assertions in How Jesus Became God?
I don't agree with everything they say.
Okay, all right, man. So if you want to talk about historians, he's a Greek textual critic. Manuscripts of
So?
Greek manuscripts is what he
So?
does. And
So?
his mentor was Bruce Metzger.
And?
That's their area of expertise.
Yeah, and they're looking at the documents as through the historical lens.
I can look at it through a historical lens. What does that
You
matter?
haven't though. You haven't though.
You haven't. You haven't. I just
You're,
gave
you're,
you
you're
a
trying to
couple.
claim that the ancient Hebrews knew what demons were. They didn't.
Well, they use a specific word for it that wasn't Elohim, so we know that much. The text, we read the text in Hebrew.
And again, that's even determining on whether or not Deuteronomy was the legit fifth book of Moses. But that's neither
So
here nor
you're
there.
shifting again. You're shifting the goalpost here.
Again, I'm not. But again, just go based off what the text says.
I did. We read it, and then we went down to.
We
So
did, but you're
trying
trying to appeal to texts that are not applicable to the context at hand. That's the issue.
I went to multiple places where Yahweh Elohim is explicitly stated, and then we also went to verse 17 where it says, "You are not gods, you are demons." And then I also went to other places in the Psalms.
And again, demons are
translate
not
Elohim
known
as
in the
angel.
ancient Hebrew understanding. That's not what they understood it to be.
Well,
So you're
you
trying to
really don't know. You
that
don't
isn't
know.
there.
You don't know what they actually knew or didn't know per se in First Temple Judaism. You're making
Well,
an
that's exactly
assertion.
what it is. So, like according to what it actually says, to the original audience of who Deuteronomy 32 would have been, if we are to take it as something that is actually legitimate, because they're pretty split on this thing. It's not, you're not just breaking the rules, but they are offering allegiance to other entities, other gods that were not
No,
the
it
God
doesn't say
of
that.
Israel. They were rejecting the God who delivered them from Egypt.
Do they have a concept of demons in Second Temple Judaism?
No.
They didn't.
No, the concept of demons
Of
didn't
course they
appear until
did,
this.
bro.
No, the concept of a
Michael
demon.
Heiser even talks
No,
about Second Temple Judaism, talking about how
the
Nephilim,
concept of demons.
disembodied Nephilim are demons.
Nephilims are not demons. Nephilim were not
Michael
demons.
Heiser says they were. Disembodied Nephilim are actually demons. That's what demons are,
They're-
not
oh
fallen
my
angels.
Oh my
Did you
gosh,
know that?
no, they're not demons. The concept of a
That's
demon
what
didn't
Heiser
appear
says.
until the late 2nd century.
No, dude. That's what Heiser says, bro. Have you read First Enoch or this other literature?
I've read it. That doesn't necessarily mean I take it as scripture.
Literally, that's what Heiser talks about what demons are. The bodies, the
Yeah, but
disembodied
again,
soul
we're
of
looking at the
Nephilim.
concept. So if Second Enoch was actually written by Enoch,
You can't.
he would
Here's the thing.
not be saying that they were demons. Nephilim are not demons.
Okay, I'm telling you, he's a scholar. You appealed to him to begin with, and now you're rejecting what he said.
Again, I don't have to agree with everything they say in order to recognize the good that is actually there and what is actually true and not.
You also said that Deuteronomy 32 was likely Second Temple post Babylon, and then
I'm
now
talking
you're
about the
saying we
entire
don't.
book of Deuteronomy, not just
And now
32.
you're saying that we don't know if they had a concept of demons because it was First Temple Judaism. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. Which place is Deuteronomy in? First or second temple?
Prior, the first temple would have called them illegitimate gods,
No,
not
come on.
demons. They're not.
That's
They
not
were
what the text
illegitimate
says.
gods, which means they were not the gods that were apportioned to them. There's a reason why Naaman, when he goes to visit Elisha and takes satchelfuls of dirt with him back to his home, so that he could worship the God of Israel, because Israel can only be worshipped in Israel.
Man, I don't know. I think that I think you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole on the multiple ontologically the same supreme beings, which
Again,
I guess you would say Elyon is supreme.
Yeah, again, this is not found anywhere within the biblical text.
Well, all throughout Isaiah 43, 44, 45, he says
Again,
that he alone is God.
The God of Israel talking to Israel It's the same type of concept. If we want to look at Isaiah 43, 44, 45, or really just any of those statements made from Isaiah
Deuteronomy.
chapters 40 through 49, that would indicate that this is a statement of incomparability. It would be just like if it was 300 years ago, where where if we would be subject to the King of England. That didn't mean the King of France didn't exist. That didn't mean that the Prussian emperor didn't exist, or the Russian emperor or empress at the time. But we
So,
only recognize the King of England as our king.
so you're adding that onto the text because it doesn't say that. But
I'm not, 'cause
Isaiah,
again, the context. Who is Isaiah speaking to? He's speaking to the house of Israel.
Here, I'll read Isaiah 44:8, the KJV. Fear ye not, neither be afraid. Have not I told thee from that time, and have declared it? Ye are my witnesses. Is there a God beside me? Yeah, there is no God. I know not any. Why would he say he knows no gods?
Who's he speaking to?
What does that matter?
It
Or is he just saying, oh yeah, I wouldn't say this to anyone else? Because those are his people. Why would he go to the Babylonians and say, hey guys, I'm going to reveal
because he's not the God of Babylon, he's the God of
guys.
Israel. He's not the God of Babylon, he's the God of Israel.
Exactly.
So yeah, when it comes to Israel, there are no other gods. Gods are not created, they just are.
No. This isn't Israel saying there are no other gods. This is God saying there are no other gods. There's a distinction.
Beside him, as far as Israel is concerned. This is
a
Hebraic idiom of incomparability.
No, it does not say that.
Go to the beginning of the chapter. Who is Isaiah speaking for the Lord speaking to? Who is he speaking to?
I don't know how that's relevant.
It absolutely is relevant because if he's well, and who is Jacob?
Well, then you can say that all of the Bible is addressed to Israel. Then is that what your point is?
It maybe certain points of it. Sure.
Okay. So
I mean, the Pauline letters are specific to those individuals within the church. Galatians is specific to the saints in Galatia. Corinthians are specific to the saints in Corinth.
If you notice, I'm reading the verse as is at face value. You're adding your own idiom that you say existed over it.
That's not my idiom.
Yes, it is. He says, there is no God beside me. I know not any. That's an exclusive statement.
I mean, okay, again, the king of Babylon says the same thing. In Jonah, it says that Nineveh is the only city.
Okay.
So again, these are Hebraic idioms to suggest that these are not.
Are you talking about wait a second. Are you saying that Jonah said that there was no other cities besides Nineveh?
Yeah, it's a common expression found
Jonah said
pretty much all throughout the Bible here.
You're saying Jonah said that. There's no other
within Jonah talking about Nineveh. Yeah, that's the only city.
Man, I don't even know how that's relevant, but we can go to Jonah if you want.
Again, within the context of what we have here, known as the trial of the gods in Isaiah chapters 40 through 49. All right, this is the God of Israel saying that he is incomparable to the other nations' gods. There is no other God beside him, neither is there any God created. Yeah, because gods are not created; they just are.
You have to read that with a clear conscience and say that's what the God of Israel is actually saying. He's not.
It's not just me who's saying that.
You're in a minority group that's interpreting it that way. That's how it's for thousands of years. That's not how it's been interpreted. That's a modern.
Well, that's an appeal to tradition, right there. Rudy.
What's up?
That's an appeal to tradition.
I mean, that's
not all
fine.
Traditions are accurate.
Well, you appeal to authority, so what's the difference?
Well, because the appeal to authority actually has backing behind it.
Not necessarily.
Actually, like in this particular case, it actually has the understanding of the ancient languages and how
you didn't actually quote them. You just said, "Hey, such and such said," and then you were talking about Deuteronomy as if they weren't Greek New Testament scholars. So that's a distinction.
Again, we're going off track here again, but sticking with what it says in Isaiah chapters 40 through 49, also known as the trial of the gods. This is a statement of incomparability. This is Isaiah warning the house of Israel, not just the nation of Judah, but the nation of Israel prior to the coming of the Assyrians, then unless they shape up, the God of Israel is not going to look out for them anymore. And we see that happen when Assyria comes in and sweeps them off.
What chapter was that?
So this is Isaiah chapters 40 through 49. This is what is commonly referred to as the trial of the gods.
Okay. And you said that what was your conclusion? What did you just say?
That it's a Hebraic idiom that with Israel going after other gods, the God that was apportioned to them will no longer protect them.
Exactly. And if you go to 2 Kings, like I wanted to do, it says that he raised up Assyria to do it. So God,
With what we were talking about in 2 Kings, it had nothing to do with Assyria. It had to do with Moab.
You just talked about Isaiah and Assyria basically overcome.
Yeah, because that was the context of Isaiah. When we were going back and forth about 2 Kings in chapter 3, we weren't talking about Assyria. We were talking about Moab.
So now we're in Assyria, and I'm telling you where I wanted to go earlier to say that it was God who raised up the Assyrians.
It's a completely different
you didn't
event,
want to go
completely
there.
different context.
No, it's the same event, same context. Same exact event.
What?
Assyria overcoming Israel.
No.
Yes.
When we were talking about what was going on in 2 Kings earlier, we were talking specifically about the battles with Moab. The battles with Moab have nothing to do with Assyria. Now we're talking about Assyria. But when we're talking about 2 Kings earlier, we weren't talking about Assyria. You were trying to bring Assyria in, which had nothing to do with what was going on with Moab.
Wait. You just...
Moab is its own context. Assyria is its own context. Babylon is its own context. These are separate events. So trying to incorporate them into a singular thing and trying to say, like, because of what happened here, that's why this happened here. No, that doesn't work. These are two different events. The issue with Moab happened several years before Assyria even came onto the scene.
You just brought up the book of Isaiah talking about how Assyria
you brought up Isaiah.
You brought up Isaiah chapters 40. Did you say
40,
chapters 40
through 49? Those 10 chapters are essentially what many are referring to as the trial of the gods.
Yeah, dude. This is the exact time period that I'm talking about in 2 Kings. It's recording the time of Isaiah and Hezekiah. 2 Kings 17 is where I wanted to go to, bro.
Yes,
and you wouldn't let me go
trying
there.
to incorporate 2 Kings 17 with what was going on in 2 Kings 3, which are two separate things.
Dude, this is ironic, man. This is rich. You just brought up Isaiah's context in his book with Assyria.
Rudy, what I'm doing is I'm showing your
the very passage from 2 Kings I wanted to go to in the first place.
Rudy, what I'm showing is your inconsistencies here.
No,
because again, you wanted to bring up Assyria when we were talking about Moab. Assyria has nothing to do with Moab. Neither does Moab have anything to do with Assyria. We can talk about Assyria now, but I'm bringing up your inconsistencies when you're trying to bring up Assyria within the context of what was happening in Moab. Elisha was the prophet during the time of the wars with Moab. Isaiah is the prophet several decades later when it came to the wars with Assyria. Again, separate context, separate people, which is why I say about these two separate events likely had, and it's a very high likability, that they had separate authors.
Bro, literally the chapters that you mentioned Isaiah is read about in 2 Kings 17, where it's God
several years after Elisha.
Okay, can we read 17, 7 and 8? Or verse?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's go there. Because again, I want you to keep in mind that trying to apply what happened with Assyria to Moab is incongruent and outside of context.
No, I disagree with you. I absolutely disagree with you.
This is several decades later, Rudy.
Okay. All right. So same book, 2 Kings 17. All this took place because the Israelites had sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them up out of Egypt, and under the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, they worshipped other gods. And for all the practices and nations of the Lord had driven them out before them, as well as the practices that the kings Israel had introduced. And if we go down, let's go to 20. Therefore, the Lord rejected all the people of Israel. He afflicted them and gave them into the hands of the plunderers until he thrust them from his presence. That's the same book that we're talking about. This is the same book context of Isaiah with Assyria coming over and taking over. So it's actually God raising up people to come after his own people.
How long? Okay, this is talking about the reign of King Ahaz, which would have
Yes.
been at least 15 years later after what we were just talking about in Moab. At least.
So wait a second. Are you saying that Isaiah wasn't a prophet during the reign of Ahaz? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying he was not a prophet during the
Okay.
reign of Jehoshaphat.
Man, I'm giving
prophet.
context.
Elisha was the prophet during Jehoshaphat. Isaiah was the prophet during Ahaz and Hezekiah.
It's the same Yahweh in the same book, same God.
Nearly 20 years later, Rudy, different contexts.
Is it the same God where it's pre-exile as post-exile, whether it's 400 years? What difference does that make?
It absolutely has a difference because this is an entire generation.
You're talking about the God who spanned thousands of years, actually from eternity to eternity, and you're saying, "Oh, 20 years later."
A lot can happen in 20 years. A lot, yeah.
Not
20
for
years
God.
later.
Not for God.
Absolutely for God.
No, absolutely not.
Are you kidding me? We see multiple instances where there are things that were changed depending on the generation.
It's not changing for God. It's changing for the people of Israel.
Yeah, and a lot can change in the generation here. Because again, here's the thing, right? And again, we can go back here, but just as an example, right? Why wasn't the generation of Moses allowed to enter into the promised land?
Because they sinned and didn't want to go to that's
because
when
of their pride, yeah.
Joshua and Caleb.
And they were in the generation after Moses.
But they were honest. They were the honest ones about what they had seen. And
so was Moses, though. So why wasn't Moses allowed to enter?
Moses sinned by striking the rock.
Yeah, but that's not the sin, though. That wasn't
the sin. That is the sin. That's literally the sin.
The Lord actually gave the sin. It wasn't the fact that he struck the rock. It was Moses' pride.
Dude, perhaps, but the sin was totally connected to how he reacted with the rock, striking the rock.
Yeah, the sin wasn't the rock itself. It was the pride associated with it.
We can agree with that. I agree with you.
So, and that was the thing. And it wasn't just Moses. It was that entire generation. So Moses, because of what he did, was not allowed to enter into the promised land. Joshua, the son of Nun, being Moses' successor as the prophet of Israel, was able to enter, but because he was not part of that generation. So a generation can actually change quite a bit. So going back to what we read about in 2 Kings, compared to the time frame between 2 Kings chapter 3 and chapter 17, that's an entire generation.
It's the same, yes, and it's the same.
The circumstances of one generation would not apply to the circumstances of another. That's the
absolutely. Hey, before they ever went into the promised land, God already told them what was going to happen from there on out if they sinned. So absolutely, it's all connected.
Yeah, because they were part of that generation.
Deuteronomy
that was the
28:25.
It was a
Deuteronomy
different
28:25.
Okay, so let's go back to 2 Kings and compare that with the time frame between chapters 3 and 17. Again, we're looking at a time span of at least 15 years according to our modern Gregorian calendar.
That doesn't matter. That's irrelevant.
Well, it does matter. And no, it does matter because this is a different generation. This is a different people. We're talking about people who would have been children at the time of Elisha versus adults at the time of Isaiah.
What was the whole purpose of Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim?
What does that have to do with what I was just talking about?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm trying to find the connection to what you're saying here.
Yes. It's
what does that
right
have to
before.
Do with what does that have to do with the time span between 2 Kings 3 and 17?
No,
what does that have to do with the amount of years there?
I'm telling you, when they go into the promised land, Deuteronomy 27, which is the verse I read later in 28, what will happen if you disobey?
What does this have to do with the differences in generations and the ages of the people involved in 2 Kings 3 versus 2 Kings 17? You're trying to conflate something. No, again, this goes back to the frustrations that were no. because
Let me
again,
finish
you're
the
trying
thought.
to no, because again, you're trying to conflate something that is not within the context of
Monty,
what we're talking about.
I don't know why
You're
you won't let
trying
me
to
finish that
assert
thought.
something, a presupposition that
It's not a
does not
presupposition.
exist. No, it is, because you're acting as if the
No,
Bible is a continuous
Deuter
narrative that can be self-referential. It's
listen,
not. We're looking at the
Deuteronomy comes
context of what is going
Deuteronomy
on here.
Deuteronomy comes before Second Kings, so that is the
At
context.
least within the from where we have within the Bible that we have now. Again, there's no clear indication as to whether or
Dude,
not that was
I don't know why
that
you
they
won't
even
let me
had
finish
that.
the thought.
Again, that's the thing. But we're looking at the context
Can
of
let
2 Kings 3 and the time span between that and 2 Kings 17.
Monty, there's a reason why you don't want to branch off to other places. There's a reason why.
Because I want to keep to the context of what's going
No,
on
this
here.
is the context. I'm trying
It's
to tell
not
you.
though. It's
I don't
not.
think you've
You're
read the
trying to
Bible, bro.
insert a
I
context
do,
that's not there, Rudy.
Monty. I'm not trying to be inflammatory here, but I
You
don't
are
think you've
though.
read the Bible.
Rudy, I have, but I also
What is
recognize that the
Mount
Bible
Ebal and Mount Gerizim?
is not univocal. It's not a
What
continuous
is
narrative.
what
It is
is
a
Mount?
library. So we have to treat
Hey,
each book as a different book within a library.
Monty, humor me. What is Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim?
This has nothing to do
You
with
don't
what we're
know.
talking about.
You don't know.
No. What I don't know is why you're bringing this up within the context
There's a
of
reason why you don't
2
want to
Kings
jump
3
around
and 2 Kings
because you don't
17.
know the Bible as a
No,
whole.
we don't. We shouldn't have to jump around, Rudy. That's the thing. We shouldn't
The thing
have
is,
to.
you probably
The only
remembered,
reason why you want to jump around is so that you can insert something that isn't there.
dude.
What I'm trying to say is that we need to stick within the context of what is actually within the text.
Monty, I'm
Trying
trying
to
to give
bring
you a
something
Bible lesson.
into the text. But again, the
Monty, I'm giving you
Bible
a
is
free
not
Bible lesson.
univocal. The Bible is a
You say that.
library. It is an
You
anthology.
say that. I reject
I'm
that.
not
You
the.
say that. I
That's
do
not
not agree with your assumption.
okay. So
Your
okay.
assertion.
Here's why my assertion is okay. When was the first Bible compiled?
That's irrelevant.
No, it is relevant.
No, it isn't
It is
relevant. It's
absolutely
not
relevant.
relevant. Are you
No,
trying to
it
say that
absolutely
the
is
scrolls?
relevant
Are you
because
wait? Are you
no,
trying to say the scrolls didn't exist prior to that?
I'm saying the collection that what we call the Bible. When was that first compiled?
In the 4th century.
Okay, so if the Bible as was not originally compiled within the 4th century, why should we treat it as a singular volume when
Are
no
you
one
trying?
beforehand did so?
Are you trying to say that the Targums didn't exist prior to the 4th century,
They
and that they
didn't
weren't
treat
already reading scrolls?
they didn't treat what we have as the biblical text as a
Do
single
you know what?
narrative.
Do you know what the Targums are?
I don't care.
You should care because all this is relevant.
Okay, again, did they treat the texts as univocal?
Tell me what Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim is. Just
That-
humor me since you've read the Bible a
no,
few
I
times.
don't. This has nothing to do with what's going on in Second Kings.
Dude.
It has nothing to do with what's going on in Second Kings.
I think it's evident what's going on here, Monty, is that you haven't actually read the Bible, and so
No,
you
I
want to stick
have.
to
I just recognize that each book is
Monty.
self-contained.
You remembered a handful of passages like Psalm 82 and 2 Kings 3, and that's what you want to get your gotcha
These are.
on.
I have no gotchas here,
And
Rudy.
you want to ignore the context of everything else we talked about.
Rudy, the only one ignoring context here is you by trying to jump around to
You can
things that
say
have
that,
nothing to do with what we're talking about. You're trying to go to other places. When we were
Monty.
talking about 2 Kings 3, you're trying to go to 2 Kings 17, which had nothing to do with 2
Monty,
Kings 3.
I'm trying to provide context, and whenever I do, you cut me off and won't let me do it.
Because you're not providing context, you're jumping around.
You want to stick to like 3 verses and then be like, oh, what's the context of here? Oh, don't go anywhere else. Just stick right here and tell me what this says. And I'm saying it's a lot more complicated than that. It's a lot more nuanced. You can't just go to one half of one chapter and say,
Yeah, but you
hey, this
can't
is my
go to a
whole.
completely different book by a completely different author to make
Sure
your
you
point
can.
either. No,
Are
you
you trying
can't.
to say? Are you trying to say that the writers of First and Second Kings weren't aware of the Torah or the
They may
Pentateuch?
have been, but that's irrelevant to what they're writing.
Of
They're
course
writing a
they were.
history of what's going on.
They didn't know the Pentateuch. Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I said. They're writing a
Okay.
history of what's happening during those times.
All right. Well, Mount Ebal, Mount Gerizim are the 2 mountains when they come into the promised land. There's a mountain of blessings, a mountain of curses. They set up an altar on Mount Ebal for the mountain of the curse, which still stands today. And God says this is a physical representation. If you follow me or not, there'll be blessings that follow or there'll be curses. That comes before Deuteronomy 28:25, even before they get into the promised land.
which
And
is
so then we see
irrelevant to what's going on between the time frame
100% relevant,
of
bro.
no, it's not.
$100 relevant.
It is not relevant to what's going on in Second Kings in that time frame of Second Kings 3 to 17. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
All right. Well, dude, what time is it in Utah?
Right
Are
now, it's
you in
about
Utah?
8:15.
So it's about 10:15. My wife already came down because I'm talking too loud and waking up the baby. But dude, we can carry on this conversation. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, but
Yeah.
a little fiery. I like it. I appreciate it.
I had fun.
I had fun too,
So
man. I had fun too.
yeah.
And so we can definitely do it again and set something up and we can go somewhere else because I think we're at an impasse where
Mhm.
I think the Bible teaches monotheism and you think it teaches henotheism. I think I've provided a good case, which you can reject, but hopefully you can respect it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can do something. Maybe dovetails off of this. Maybe we can see it. Where the Bible or where the biblical text, teaches the consubstantiation taught by the Trinity. So,
That's fine. Well,
all right,
I would say that is a good topic, but I think it's hard to get there if we don't first establish monotheism. So I think that we're gonna get hung up a little bit, but I'm willing to do that.
okay, all righty, all right, sounds good. I'll go ahead and let you go. You go ahead and take care of that wife and baby of yours, and I'll go do the same thing with mine. And no, you happy. Hope you have a great night, Rudy.
All right, Monty, I appreciate it, bud.
All right, not a problem. Have a good one. All right. Well, like you said, a bit heated, a lot of talking over each other. Um, no, yeah, you're probably right. I don't know. That was the thing. This Rudy seems like a decent guy. I will say this. Like he seems like a good guy. Yes, it did get heated, but that's I think that's kind of the point of something like this again. So, um, and you know what, Mike, you may be right. Monolatry may be a better term than henotheism, but it's not altogether incorrect either. Um, but no, I think this will be really interesting. In any case, yeah, surprised we disagree. Yep, exactly right. All righty. Well, I am actually going to be taking off here as well. Thanks for coming up. Yeah, the clear example with the Moabites, he's helpless. Yeah, I mean, and this is where I think the issue comes into play, where if you think that the Bible is somehow univocal, and that it is uh a singular text, a continuous text. That's where I think the issue is here. I think the only honest way to read the Bible is to recognize it as a library. It is meant to be viewed as an anthology, which means each individual book, each individual manuscript, text, scroll, whatever, is meant to be taken on its own individual merits. And so trying to justify and jump back and forth between books in order to justify certain things, unless there is a direct reference to it within the text, doesn't necessarily help matters. And I don't think that really works. So, in any case, I absolutely agree with this. Mainstream Christianity really is shallow theology. That's one of the reasons why I've gotten to the point where I call it creedal Christianity. But this is the kind of the point, with when things like Rudy and things like that. Like, I am very much in line with making sure that more conversations happen. Now, yes, conversations can get heated, as they often do, as was demonstrated here. But if we are not willing to have these conversations, then that's where things like what happened in Michigan in September happen. That's where things like the extermination order comes about. We need to be willing to have these conversations, even if we don't necessarily come to an agreement at the end. We need to be willing to have these types of conversations with people, even if they get a bit contentious. So, in any case, I'm going to take off here. I appreciate you guys coming in and you know enjoying this time with me. But I will see you all next time, and I'll give you homework in the comments for next time. Okay. All right, Trey. I appreciate that. I was trying not to be influenced so much by the comments. I do appreciate the comments. I did see them. I wanted to give Rudy as much of my attention as possible. So in any case, I will see you all next